All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming to this talk. My name is Tia Caldwell, and I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about harnessing your team's superpowers. If you want to follow me, not saying you have to, I'm available on Twitter. If you have any questions afterwards, or if you want to see these superpower cards I'm going to share with you today. But let's go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me first before I begin. My name is Tia again. I'm a graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana. I studied computer science there for 4 years. When I was there, I did undergraduate research for the Missile Defense Agency. So if you would have asked me when I was like a sophomore or junior, what am I going to do? I would have totally told you that I would have been working for the government, working on ballistic missiles, trying to make sure that they don't hit us and we can figure out a way to intercept them. But right before that happened, my junior year, I got an internship at Microsoft where they dangled the carrot. And life was great. I mean, life was so sweet in Seattle. What I mean by that is they flew me out. I got to stay in this nice hotel for my interview. They gave me intern housing. I would say the highlight of my internship was actually going to Bill Gates' house. We had like a summer picnic. Hi, Tara. So it was a great experience there. So when I got back to college, of course, I declined quickly on doing ballistic missiles or hanging out with Bill Gates. So I just say I was hanging out with Bill Gates. When I was there, though, my career history was pretty long. I worked at Microsoft for 11 years. I started off as a QA engineer, intern, and then worked my way up to a development manager. And I worked on a whole bunch of teams, but I would say like maybe every 2 years, the perks of being at a big company is that I switched to a different team. So I started off working on, my very first project was to deprecate Clippy. Everybody knows Clippy. So sad. We all love him. Okay, no, not too much. Clippy was a security hazard and was way before his time. And so one of my first projects was trying to rip Clippy out of the code base. And then I went to work on Office 365, where I worked on identity management. And if a lot of you have heard, Office 365 is supposed to be the new bread and butter. But when I was there, there was like a Microsoft account, a Hotmail account, a SharePoint identity. There was just like so many. So our goal was to try to condense all of that into one and just have a universal Microsoft identity. The highlight, though, is like being able to actually be able to transition from Office into Xbox, because that was like my dream job. I'm a huge gamer. Anybody Xbox fans out there? Yes. All right, got it. Let's talk afterwards. We'll share. Maybe I should have put my gamer tag up there. Okay, no. So it was a huge win when I actually landed a job working on the Universal Store, where again, similar problem, 180,000 person company, where you're trying to condense 10 different stores that exist out there in the marketplace and consolidate it into one universal store, because we were coming out with a new suite of products. So our latest one was HoloLens, where we were trying to make a store or an app store available for HoloLens. And then there was one for mobile phones. And so we were trying to consolidate that into one package. After working there for 11 years in rainy old Seattle, I decided to switch to Netflix, and I made the leap to the Bay Area. So when I was at Netflix, I worked on the content delivery network team. Open Connect is what it's actually called. And so whenever you press play, any of that, if you see a spinner when you're pressing play, that is a problem. But if you see a nice movie or TV show, that is also a win, and that was what our team was responsible for delivering. So it was a lot of fun experience. Got to meet a lot of my cool peers who are here, and you've probably heard from yesterday. And then just most recently, 18 months ago, I joined Slack, this little company called Slack. Have you guys heard it? Are you using it? Okay, great. I'm happy. Please still use it because I lead the monetization team. I lead the monetization team at Slack, and we're always trying to get money. Okay, please, no. What we're trying to do is convince people to go from the free version of Slack, which probably a lot of you are on, and into the paid version of Slack. Some people aren't even aware that there's a paid version of Slack because they're just so used to clicking away from the banners and just hitting ignore. So if you can, help a sister out and click buy. Okay, so that's about me. So to set the tone for the presentation around harnessing your superpowers, I just wanted to start off with some facts. Did you know 1/3 of your life will be spent working? I know this sounds pretty dire, but for all the engineers in the room and everybody who loves math, this is the equivalent of 90,000 working hours for the average American, according to the U.S. Labor and Bureau of Statistics. Of that time span, most of us will have between 7 to 15 jobs, which is a lot. And I would say in tech in particular, given that I told you how I switch teams and everything every 2 years, it's even more accelerated and fast-paced just because of the fast-paced environment that we're in. So trust me, it's inevitable. You will probably at some point in your career be shifting. So by a raise of hands, can I ask who in this room has been reorged or reorganized before? Oh, wow, that's a good chunk of us. Okay, great. How many of you have switched to a new company in the last 6 months? Okay, that's a lot. Okay, okay. And then what about last year? Last 2 years? Great. Okay, so I would say, as you can see, the typical tenure at a tech company is between 18 months and 3 years, according to LinkedIn data that's out there. And the reason why I'm saying trust me is inevitable is that we will all at some point in time be switching to a new team, and everybody wants to start off with their best footing. So I'm trying to help you figure out how to harness your superpowers so that when you do switch to a new team or you get reorged into a new team, you start off with the right footing. The best way to go about that is to actually have a personal operating manual. So I'm not sure how many of you all have heard of the concept of a personal operating manual, but as a person coming into an organization or into a company, you should be, I would say, you should be true to yourself and understand like what your strengths and weaknesses are. So personal operating manuals allow for that information to be shared up front with your respective team. And the reason why this is important is because if you don't get out there and define yourself, you'll quickly be defined inaccurately by other peers. So this is really challenging. I would say when you join a new team, one of the biggest challenges is like, well, you're having this doubt in your head. Will they like me? They're probably also thinking like, how are you going to interrupt the team dynamic? What are you bringing to the table? So instead of having somebody come in and through like a lot of interactions where you have to learn by trial by fire, which could take up to years to get to know your teammates, how about you come in and have a personal operating manual in place so that you can just short circuit all of the misunderstandings. So here's what a personal operating manual is. They're a short professional document that aims to learn how to work better together by offering an explicit description of one's values and communication styles. It helps your team and you in general unlock superpowers. And the reason why I say that is because it builds psychological safety. This is a huge term that's been out there for a while, but it pretty much allows anybody in your team, what you want, the dream team is to be able to share your opinions or your concerns or ask questions to your teammates without feeling like you'll be humiliated or punished for asking a question. So the key is how can you come into an environment and short circuit that so you don't have to deal with these sort of things. The other thing is that it helps out with improving communication. It provides insights into like what your motivation is as an individual. We're not robots. No one is managed the same. So being able to understand how your peers come in and how they operate and what makes them tick will be a win for you. I would say another huge goal is that it enables better collaboration and fosters empathy. When you understand where a person is coming from or their journey, it helps you as an individual want to help them get to the next level or to the next journey or step in their career so much more. And the biggest thing I would say is it definitely helps avoid misunderstandings. So this is something that you should totally try out, and we'll look into the next few slides on how to do that. Another key win for a personal operating manual, I'm going to start calling them POMs because it's so long to say, is that it can shorten the learning curve for a new employee joining a team. And what I mean by this is what is contained in a personal operating manual. It's ideally a one-pager with short, succinct sentences. And so for everybody in the room, bullet style is kind of what we try and say. So that makes the task of writing, which a lot of people hate doing, including myself, makes it way easier. So you ask yourself these questions like, what is my working style? What do I value? And it's not like, here's what I want my working style to be in the future. It's like, as of today, here's how I operate as a human being. And what do I value? How to best communicate with me. What do people misunderstand about me? And what I just absolutely do not tolerate or don't have patience for. and how to help me. So let's look at my personal operating manual. And I'm sorry for the people in the back of the room, you can't see. But at Slack, we actually encourage a lot of people to go around and create your personal operating manual. And here is a stab at mine. And so the first thing I'll start off with is my motto: be proud, be humble, have fun, and kick ass. So when anybody joins my team, they actually know here's what I'm getting into, the good and the bad and the ugly, when they come to work with Tia. So some of the things, I'll just read out some bullets for people who can't see in the back of the room. My working style: I like to lead via autonomy. More hands-on initially, but more than willing to pass the reins after we establish trust. I consider myself an action-oriented, easygoing extrovert. I'm super transparent. I probably talk too much, but I'm trying to make sure that I provide you with the right information to help you get your job done. Now, how can you help me is a good one, because I feel like a lot of times we struggle, or I know I personally struggle, when asking how can my peers help me, because you don't want to show any weakness. And so one of the things that I'm really concerned about is how can I showcase my team's talents in an authentic way. I would say there's always this fine line of trying to understand how do you balance showing off the cool work that your team did versus bragging. And I honestly don't know how to do that. So I would like for people to show me or give me opportunities to help me understand that. Another one that I can say is tell me when I can skip a meeting. As a manager, I'm in tons of meetings. Pretty much my whole day is meetings. I think people can relate in here. So tell me when I can skip it, because as I said, once we have that trust, I expect for you as an engineer to be able to come over and drive that problem to resolution and get the job done. The thing that I value the most is teamwork. So not one star in the team. What I say is we don't have one star or a team of our one rock star on the team that's just pulling everybody along. What you want is a team of Incredibles. I consider us the Incredibles, where all of our superpowers are better as a collective. Everybody brings something unique to the table, and we should figure out a way to make that dynamic better. How to best communicate with me? Since I'm in meetings all day, it would be great if you had an agenda. It'd be even better if you're asking me for feedback to give me at least a day or so heads up so that I can actually form my thoughts to give you constructive feedback. I would say the biggest, what makes me grumpy at work is when somebody will come up to me and say, hey, we have performance reviews coming up. How am I doing? But they had no thought, no conversation, puts me on the spot. Usually what we'll do is try and make sure that both of us are coming to the table with a great background, and then we can have a more tailored conversation. And then what makes me happy about being at work? Being around motivated people who take pride in their work. So that's pretty simple. Our team, I think this is out there on the internet. You could literally, on the internet, you can Google personal operating manual. There are 100 different ways to do this. This is just the way that Slack does it, and we put our picture in there just to personalize it a little bit more so that when a new face joins, they can see who the person is that they're learning about. So then, as engineers, we always like to go above and beyond. So your stretch goal, there's a stretch goal exercise for everyone in here. And the goal would be to get your entire team to create one. And the reason why is because not only does this tool provide psychological safety for you and your team, but if you all come in creating one, then it makes the experience in the journey for new people so much better. So I encourage you all to go try that out. Oops. Yeah. So the next tool in the toolbox is to get to know your teammates. So you put together all of this work to help people understand more about you as an individual, but to be on a healthy team and understand your peers' motivations, you have to actually go, one, present your personal operating manual. Then the second thing would be to understand what are their motivations. So today I'm going to give you a framework on how to get that done. The reason why this is so important is because once you have a healthy relationship with your team, it boosts your team productivity. It leads to higher retention. People are less likely to switch when people have a common understanding of how one operates. It also just makes it a happier place to come to work. I don't know how many times have you heard when back in the day from your parents where they're like, oh my gosh, I got to go to this job every 9 to 5. I can't stand the people I work with, but I'm just going to do it because I need my paycheck. We don't want you to be in that situation when you're joining a team. We want you to be a part of a team where you actually feel like your voice can be heard and that you're actually coming in and you're being productive in your best self. So to accomplish this, I would say I wanted to share this framework with you that I typically use for any new hire that's joining my team, and how to tailor that towards you. So Laura Hogan, who is a writer and a coach, she used to be she's also an ex-engineer, put together this framework on like first one-on-one questions to ask in any one-on-one situation with your teammate. So grumpiness is like the icebreaker. The reason why we put this in here is because I want to understand what makes you grumpy. How will I know when you're grumpy? And then how can I most importantly help when you're grumpy? So I said, I don't like to be put on the spot. And so when I have that in my personal operating manuals for feedback, and I say, hey, this is going to make me grumpy, people are aware of that, and we can help tailor the situation. The next big bucket is like the meat and potatoes, and I would say feedback and recognition. There are a lot of people who are introverts, and you have extroverts, and some people are completely fine with being recognized in public about how great they did a thing. Especially in Slack, it's so easy for you to just like post in channel to say, wow, this person did a great job, let's give them a kudos. But maybe that person doesn't want feedback where it's like shown publicly. So the question for you is to ask, how do you like your feedback? Do you want it to be more real time? Do you want it to be like a planned scheduled meeting? Do you want it to be a walking one-on-one? Just what style do you like? Do you want it to be an email and you want somebody to write it down first so that you can get your thoughts together and then reply? It just depends. And then how often would you like it? So for me, I know a lot of people, and a lot of us in here are just like, give me the feedback, real time, I can take it. I know I can handle it, just give it to me right now. But we have to actually be ready to receive that feedback. And if we're not ready to receive it, it would be nice to have a guideline up front with your team and with your peers to say like, okay, well maybe give me some time to do X, Y, and Z first so that I can then figure out how we can have this conversation. And then, how do you like to be recognized, public or private? These are the common questions that we try to make sure we ask to make sure that we're not making anybody uncomfortable. And then goals and support. I would say this is not just a tool that can be used for managers. I feel like this is a tool that can be used for ICs, individual contributors, and anybody joining a new team. So what are your goals for the next 3 months? What do you need from your team? What do you need from your peers or your manager? And the reason why we ask this is just because we want to make sure that when we see an opportunity as an individual, I can then align your goals to help support you in a better way if I know what's there. But a lot of the times, we don't have those honest conversations because people don't want to show their vulnerability at work. So this leads to the last final question on like what makes one-on-ones the most valuable for you. I tell my team, one-on-ones are actually for them. So skip the status meeting updates. This is not what it's for. It's about how can we help build your career? What are the things that you need coaching on? And move forward from there. Whoops, I think I'm hitting next. Nope. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Google's Project Aristotle. I know Mecca probably has since he's at Google. But the reason why this is important, where we're talking about feedback and making sure that you know your peers, is that these are the key dynamics for a successful team. Google did this 2-year-long project where they investigated or interviewed a bunch of companies and successful teams. And the number one factor for making a team successful was psychological safety. And this is probably contrary to a lot of people, because I would say back in the day, people would say, oh, if you just put a lot of smart people in a room together, the problem will get solved. But that is not true. It's not like IQ based. It's about how safe does one feel how safe does one feel and how much risk can they take in a safe space and be vulnerable in front of one another. That's how innovation gets built. If you have a lot of risk involved and you feel safe taking those risks, then you're more likely to innovate quicker and faster. The second thing is dependability. Team members get things done on time. It meets Google's high bar for excellence. I don't know what that bar is. But I would say this is a thing for your teammates. Like, you really want reliable, dependable people who say what they're going to do. And so that's a form of accountability, making sure that you do what you say you're going to do, which leads into integrity. I would say the next thing is structure and clarity. So everyone has clear roles, plans, and goals. And so usually when you start a new team, you have a mission, a vision, a purpose. And the more well-defined your roles are between like design, engineering, PM, it'll help make the team longevity last way longer. And then meaning, what is personally important to your team members? So doing that exercise that I showed you with Laura Hogan's framework, you can actually understand what is really important to your teammates and aligning them to those things that help them get in there, because then they'll be motivated engineers who are ready to work and doing work that's meaningful to them. And then last thing is impact. With me working on the money team, people want to make sure that their work that they're doing is actually impacting them in the right way, and it matters and creates change. And so we can see this directly because we have a lot of metrics that define, here's what your goals are. Oh, is it showing fully? Oh, here's what your goals are as a team for like our revenue, our regions that we're trying to hit. But I would say in general, just what impact is your team having is critical for helping people feel recognized and successful within a team. So some stretch goals for everybody. Network with people beyond your immediate team. So I know I talked to you about like, here's how to get to know your teammates, but instead of going up to like a VP and saying, let's do Laura Hogan's one-on-one structure, I don't recommend that. I would say you should actually encourage yourself to step beyond your normal team once you feel comfortable and network with people outside. This is great because it actually gives you a different perspective on how other teams are operating. I would say a common mistake that I see when I first started my career was like I just stayed within my team, didn't look out, didn't care what was over on the horizon. But you should, because it gives you a lot of ideas. It helps you understand if people have had failures before. You can bring that information back to your team to help boost your performance. I would say the other goal or powerful tool of networking is that it helps out with getting you a sponsor. So throughout your career, you've probably heard mentors versus sponsors, where mentors are probably like the people on your team that you're getting to know, and they're just here to help you out and be a sounding board for advice. But when you're building your network, you want to try and get a sponsor, because this person can help you out with your career, can help you out with promotions, getting more money, bonus, and even landing your next job. There's a study out there that says around 70% of new jobs are actually found through just word of mouth through your network, and half of the time the job is not even posted. It's just like tapping somebody on the shoulder saying, I know you would be perfect for this. So you need to get that person in your back pocket so that you can always have sponsors, and making sure that you reciprocate that relationship and cultivating it so that you can have that in time. So now for the fun section, harnessing your team's superpowers. So I've now walked you through how to have people understand more about you, and then how you can get to know your team better. But then what can you do to help understand or use your strength in the right way to help your team excel? So as humans, we tend to focus on our weaknesses. But have you ever contemplated what is your God-given talent or that natural trait that comes so easy to you that you could leverage in the right way to help make your team excel? Seriously, when is the last time we had this conversation? I would say, as a person who usually has a lot of imposter syndrome, I'm always focusing on the negative. I can get a review of like positive things, but that one line is the one thing that I will remember throughout my entire review. And so what if we actually change that mindset to start thinking about the positive? And I would like to introduce you to SY Partners, because they actually have a fun way to do that, so I don't have to come up with this on my own. So SY Partners is a management consultant agency where they actually did a study on leadership, effective leadership traits for, I want to say there's 21 effective leadership traits, where they interviewed a lot of companies, CEOs, to figure out what makes a leader tick and what is actually critical for helping them have a successful business. And the goal is to learn what positive and negative aspects are you as an individual bringing to the team, and then how can you leverage that to emphasize the positive. And so this tool we're going to play today is available for anybody to use. You can do it through your phone, but we actually have the card version after this talk. If you actually want to see the cards, come find me and you can take the superpower training yourself. So it's game time. Let's get started. So I feel sorry for the people in the back, so I'll try and read the first step. So I actually had my team do this. It was a really fun way to have some team bonding, to figure out what is your superpower, and make it in a really lighthearted fashion. So I'll read the very first one, and you all keep track of like which one do you think this maps to. So the idea behind this is that you will ask yourself one question of like, in your current team as of today, not future Tia, not here's where you want to be in 3 years, As of today, what is your superpower? So let's start with the first one. This team has to do the impossible, and they don't have many resources or much time. We've all been in this situation. They have the will, but they need the way. They need someone with scrappiness and smarts to create something out of nothing, which is why they need you. So that's number one. And then number two is the team is full of talent, but despite all the rock stars, they aren't making music. They need to be more than the sum of their parts. They need someone who can bring out the best in each of them and the best in the team overall. This is why they need you. The third one, the team is in the midst of a big push, and they're not done yet. The work is getting closer, but it requires more effort, more attention, more elbow grease. They need to keep pushing. They need perseverance. This is why they need you. This team has been busy producing their stuff. Number four, this team has been busy producing their stuff. It's been a while since they've sought out an outside opinion, and they've lost perspective on whether or not the stuff they're producing is any good. They need help seeing their blind spots, which is why they need you. So to start off the exercise created by SY Partners, you'll have a team, you'll meet in a group, and everybody will get a deck of 21 cards, and you'll keep flipping until you find the one card that resonates with you. As individuals, you usually try to say, like, well, no, there's like these two cards that are actually that resonate with me the most, but you have to pick just one because it's supposed to be your natural talent that you do on a day-to-day that is probably harder for somebody to do if they had to actually figure out how to do this superpower. So keep in mind 1, 2, 3, 4, because now we're going to reveal which one are you. So the first one was all about ingenuity, and then the second one was all about harmonizing and trying to figure out like how to make the team better, and then the third was about grit. The fourth was gap detection. So how many number ones were there in the room? Oh, nice. Okay, we need you. We need you. Harmonizers. Oh, it's a lot of harmonizers. Okay, got it. Got it. Grit. Okay, got some gritty people in here. And gap detection. Nice. These are like just the 4 examples of traits that are necessary through this like stack of 21 traits. But as you can see, it's just like a quick, fun way for you to identify that. And then the next step would be to understand how this trait can be used for good or evil. There's always a light side and a shadow side to all of this. And so I'm going to go with grit and harmonizing for the 2 examples rather than reading through all the cards because I encourage you all to go try it on your own. So grit, again, are people with extraordinary levels of endurance and tenacity and focus. Everybody loves a gritty person. But if this is their superpower, their effort isn't the same as effectiveness. This is a huge lesson. Just because you've been at something forever doesn't mean that it's your best work. You should tap on a provocateur or a gap detector to get an honest assessment of your work. And then the next thing is like, don't assume that your teammates have the same level of endurance that you have. You might be able to run a 100-mile race, but maybe they're just trying to run a 5K. And so this is like a good perspective to have as an engineer because when you are in these situations where you have grit, you do need somebody as a gap detector to come in and be able to say like, hey, I know you're like working hard, but are you working smart? Are you working on the most important or impactful thing? And usually if you don't have that, you'll just keep going at all costs and become overwhelmed and burnt out. So we don't want that. So as a manager, what I would do is if I know I have a person with grit, I would try to partner them up on purpose intentionally with a person who has like these other traits, the gap detector or provocateur, to make sure that they're always having that right balance. The next one is if you're working with them, encourage them to take breaks. People who are gritty are usually burnt out really quick. They don't know how and when they should stop. And I would say it is your goal as a great teammate to help them understand that they're doing too much. People with grit have a reserve tank of belief and commitment that keeps them going. And if the belief, and that belief can give you a boost when you feel your own levels dropping. It's like a shot in the arm. So good and evil for grit. Harmonizing. So when I actually took this assessment, I took it twice. I actually got harmonizing 2 times, and it was over 2 different time spans. So this is like, it's really real. So harmonizers instinctively know how to channel the team's energy and talent. And I would say, I don't know if this is just like a skill that I've developed over time because I've been in management for around the last 7 or so years. But it's really important because you can figure out how to get professional performance out of an amateur team. And I would say at Slack, right now we're experiencing hyper growth where at any given point in time, The person on your team can be super junior, like straight an intern or a boot camp grad. But I would say when I look around the room, the reason why we did this training is because 75% of my people were brand new to the company, brand new to Slack. And so we had to figure out a way to help everybody gel as fast as possible to get results. Another good thing about this superpower is don't forget to consider growth opportunities when optimizing the team. You may be able to get the right notes out of people, but the notes can fall flat if people are playing the same ones over and over. And so as a harmonizer, you have to be able to play to people's strengths and weaknesses. And if you do the same thing over and over, and it's always like, hey, this person is going to go do feature X, and you never change it up, they're most likely going to be unhappy and leave. So you want to make sure that you keep it dynamic and interesting, and you're always having one-on-one pulse checks to understand what the needs are of your team. The next one, I was like, if you're working with me, harmonizers can only be effective if you trust them and their motives. Try and be as open and honest and transparent with them as possible. The more they know about you, the better they are at what they do. Tell them your strengths, your limits, and your ambitions, and they'll find a way to play to the best, play that up to the best. And so Laura Hogan's framework, this personal operating manual, will help me align as a manager to just get that in place, that we always put you on the most impactful, interesting work of your life. So the next steps for that would be use this superpower to create a dialogue. So having these superpowers is like a really fun, positive way to talk about yourself. I know for people who have a hard time championing, like, here's what I do best, and because they don't want to seem like they're bragging or self-advocating for themselves, it's way easier to just say, like, here's my superpower. I'm a harmonizer. I wear it on my chest. But I would say you can take this superpower and figure out how can you use this for the team's mission. How can you use your superpower, bring it out more to help your team? And then determine, as a team, once you have all of your superpowers, the next step in the process is for you as a group to go up there. So usually what happens is those cards that I showed right here are posted throughout the room on the walls, and then you will put Post-it notes for everybody, so everybody in the room can see what category they fall into. And then once you understand that, you as a manager can figure out, well, what are the superpowers that are missing? And then once you have that, the next goal is to build a diverse team to make sure that you have good diversity of thought on your team. So right now, I would say my team is heavily skewed towards people who have grit, and I only have one provocateur and no gap detector. So right now I'm looking to hire individuals who are a little bit more forthcoming, a little bit more direct, to be able to change the dynamic. And so it takes the hiring level up a notch. Instead of just saying oh, I'm trying to hire a diverse employee, you're actually trying to understand how does this person tick? What makes them think the way they are? You talk about your strengths and weaknesses, and that helps you out as an engineer and as a manager. And then conduct check-ins with your teammates. And what I mean is, once you have your superpower, you can start asking your teammates, hey, did I use my superpower today? Okay, I know that sounds corny. But then I would say maybe every month or so you say, hey, we're in this situation together. Do you felt like I used my superpower for good or evil? And everybody is aware of this concept. And so it creates a language that makes it just easier to have conversations and get gauges on if you're still bringing your true self to work. And then the last thing is to update your personal operating manual with your superpower. So I know I showed you where I had my motto to be fun and kick ass and all that stuff, but now I actually have in there, and my new personal operating manual is around making sure everybody knows that I'm a harmonizer, and here's how it can be used for good and evil. So the unfortunate part is when people join the team, they haven't taken this exercise, but it's so easy to do where you can just give them a deck of cards and you do it together. You can figure that out, add it to your personal operating manual, and then people know how to operate and work with you. So great. Let's see how I'm doing on time. The next category our step is to diffuse the drama. So now that you have your superpowers in place, you've done all these trainings, you create all these personal operating manuals, you're probably thinking, yeah, I don't have anything else to do because everything is great, the team is operating. That's so wrong. I would say, yes, 5 minutes. Okay, woo, okay. So diffusing the drama is really important and critical because despite of all of us trying to put our best foot forward, I would say workplace interpersonal issues is the #1 factor in why people have conflict. And so being aware of how you play into this drama will help you put a better foot forward when joining a new team. So let's look at this. Have anybody in here heard of the drama triangle? So this is like a really cool, I didn't draw this, so sorry, stole this from the internet. So this is a really cool concept that was created by Stephen Cartman in 1968. And it just helps us understand what kind of role we as individuals play when someone approaches us with drama or unhealthy behaviors. And so the first one I'll start with is victim. So a victim is a person who always feels powerless. Do we have those friends who are like, I just can't catch a break. Everything is wrong. This always happens to me. There's this victim personality. And when you see that, and now that you're aware that this triangle exists, what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to use this to be able to tailor those interactions to be a more positive and healthy one. So the first one is victim. Now the second one, which I wouldn't think would be a bad thing, but it actually is rescuer. So a rescuer or a hero is the person who usually comes in and tries to make another person's problem their own. So how many times has your family member or a friend came to you and vented, and you're like, oh, I have this problem, and you just take it on for yourself. And then you get so encompassed in that you just forget everything else that's going on in the rest of your life. So don't do that. It's not good. If that person, usually what the questions they ask themselves is like, oh, look at that poor soul. I'm such a nice person. I'm just going to go over and help them out right now. And it makes you feel so much better, but that's not the right behavior. And then you have the person who is a persecutor, or I would say we also call it a villain. And that's that person who is like just self-righteous, always thinks they're right. So they're wrong, I'm right, you do what I say. And that person will get what's coming to them if they don't do what I say. And so the thing about this is that we all can go through the rescuer, persecutor, and victim at one given point in time. But the main one that we all hit home with is victim. At some point in our time, when we're complaining to a person, we always fall back into victim mode. And nobody wants to admit it at first, but realize that it is going to happen. And the victim and rescuer relationship is really something that is powerful, because as a rescuer, if you don't if you're always trying to solve other people's problems, then people will still continue to come to you as a victim. And so you have this weird codependency. So you got to break the cycle. So to break that cycle, there is this new triangle that's out there that's like way more positive and focused on outcomes. So when someone does approach you with the drama, what you can do as an individual is like flip that behavior. Instead of being a rescuer, try and be a coach. Empower those people through inquiry to help them gain clarity. Not try and go and solve their problem, but what if you just go and say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? But not put in that actual mental effort that can cause like drains of energy for you. The last part would be the second one would be creator. So instead of being a victim, be a creator. Focus on vision and desired outcomes. So victims are usually like, oh my God, everything bad is happening to me. But as a creator, if you say, I'm going to focus on action and desired outcomes, you'll start taking full responsibility for initiating that conversation. And then persecutor, it's just a tweak. Instead of saying like, hey, I'm going to blame everybody for being horrible and criticize you, think about a way to challenge that person, and just think about holding another person accountable for taking that action. So those are the two triangles. You should take a look at it. It's a really fascinating read. There's this book called 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. So if you want to check that out in more detail, I highly encourage everyone to do that. So to end that, figure out what role you play in the drama, and shift to TED, the empowerment dynamic, the empowerment dynamic triangle. And then if somebody else does come to you with drama, have this conversation on fact versus story. The way to eliminate a lot of the drama is to say, like, here's what the fact is versus, like, here's the story. We as individuals can usually, like, spin up or conjure up a lot of stories about, hey, this person rejected my code review. They're such a jerk. I'm not going to talk to them anymore. When, in fact, they were just, like, doing what was best for the product. And so when somebody does approach you with something like that, think of this. There's a whole other thing you can Google called fact versus story to help you, like, short circuit the drama. So final words. Take control of your narrative. It's really important as individuals when you join a new team that you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. Don't let anyone come in here and onto your team and define who you are as an individual. It's really important that we understand what are our inherent strengths and weaknesses and use that for good to help us, like, not only help ourselves, but then help our team. So thank you for being here today. Hopefully you like to talk. Thank you. You want the questions?